meeting to order. May we have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Ms. Bradford, please call the roll.
Mr. Carson?
Aye.
Ms. Nolan?
Aye.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Aye.
Mrs. Creighton? Mr. Oaks?
Aye.
Mrs. Perkins?
Aye.
And Mr. Hodges?
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay, all present.
I would like to now ask everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we have a recommendation for today's agenda?
Yes, we do. I recommend the board approve the November 27th, 2018 special open session board meeting agenda as presented.
Do I have a motion? please?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We'll now move on to public participation, and we have none this morning. We will now move on to roll call action items. We have a recommendation for the personnel action items.
Yes, I recommend the board approve the personnel action items listed in the memo from Deanne Hillman, Director of Human Resources, as presented.
Have a motion, please.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Nolan?
Aye.
Mrs. Perkins?
Aye.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Aye.
Mr. Carson?
Aye.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye.
Mrs. Creighton?
Aye.
And Mr. Oaks?
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay.
Do we have a recommendation for a Director of Operations?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the employment of Henry Walker for the position of Director of Operations, as presented.
Have a motion, please.
So moved.
Any seconds?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'd like to make a statement. So I was a no vote for this job description when it was presented 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I appreciate the fact that Henry is being brought forward as the recommendation, and I have no problem with him as a person. Where I have a problem is with the process of how this all unfolded. I am struggling with approving this because I think that this was done in a fashion that was completely backwards. Where we started with the person, designed the job description, it was not transparent and open, and now we are making a recommendation, and I'm really having a hard time supporting this.
I'm going to second that and just say that, you know, when I struggle with something that I'm not as familiar with, I try to relate it to something that I do know. And in the world of theater and music, this would be like pre-casting a role. And as a director and as a performer, that's not a practice I condone in my professional life, so I have trouble with it here. We've also been reminded several times that we're under a time crunch because of Randy's impending retirement, so I feel like if we don't approve this hire, we become the bad guy who is keeping us from doing work on the strategic plan and the facility plan that we approved as a board. So while I know that a nay vote is futile at this point, I at least have to say that I hope that this process that we took to get here doesn't become the regular practice for how we do business.
Anyone else? Roll call vote.
Mr. Oaks?
Aye.
Ms. Nolan?
No.
Mrs. Perkins?
Aye.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Aye.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Carson?
Yes.
And Mrs. Creighton?
Aye.
6 ayes, 1 nay, sorry. 6 ayes, 1 nay.
Motion carried. Do we have a recommendation for an interim principal at Harris Elementary School?
Motion carried.
Yes, I recommend the board approve the employment of Kelly Larrick at a daily rate of $100 in addition to her regular salary as the interim principal at William Harris Elementary School on a day-to-day basis effective December 3rd, 2018.
Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Aye.
Ms. Nolan?
Aye.
Mrs. Perkins?
Aye.
Mrs. Creighton?
Aye.
Mr. Oaks?
Aye.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye.
And Mr. Carson?
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nay.
Motion carried. Do we have a recommendation for an interim principal at Hope Academy Magnet School?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the employment of Heather Ethel at a daily rate of $100 in addition to her regular salary as the interim principal at Hope Academy Magnet School on a day-to-day basis effective December 3rd, 2018.
Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mrs. Perkins,
Aye.
Mr. Hodges,
Aye.
Mrs. Briscoe,
Aye.
Mrs. Creighton, Mr. Oaks,
Aye.
Ms. Nolan,
Yes.
and Mr. Carson. 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Do we have a recommendation for the fiscal year 2018-2019 wages for administrative support employees?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the fiscal year 2018-2019 wages for administrative support employees as presented.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mrs. Creighton,
Aye.
Ms. Nolan,
Aye.
Mrs. Perkins,
Aye.
Mr. Hodges,
Aye.
Mr. Oaks,
Aye.
Mr. Carson,
Yes.
and Mrs. Briscoe.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay.
Do we have a recommendation for the fiscal year 2018-2019 wages for administration?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the fiscal year 2019 wages for administration as presented.
May I have a motion?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Oaks,
Abstain?
Mr. Hodges,
Aye. Oh, yes, you're right. I'm sorry, I was going to get it. Snake, here we go.
can I just start the roll call over, please?
Abstain?
Mr. Oaks,
Abstain.
Mr. Hodges,
Abstain.
Mrs. Perkins,
Aye.
Mr. Carson, Mrs. Briscoe,
Aye.
Ms. Nolan,
Aye.
and Mrs. Creighton.
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nay, 2 abstain.
Do we have a recommendation for the updated amended fiscal year 2018-2019 wages for ancillary employees?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the updated amended fiscal year 2018-2019 wages for ancillary employees as presented.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Carson, Mrs. Creighton,
Aye.
Mr. Hodges,
Aye.
Ms. Nolan,
Aye.
Mrs. Perkins,
Aye.
Mr. Oaks,
Aye.
and Mrs. Briscoe.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay.
Motion carried. Do we have a recommendation for the health insurance / wage memorandum of understanding for SEIUA Local 73 custodial employees?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the health insurance / wage memorandum of understanding for SEIUA Local 73 custodial employees as presented.
We have a motion
So moved.
and second.
Second.
Any discussion?
That is the corrected, updated version,
This
correct?
is the custodian was not.
Oh, I'm sorry,
updated.
I'm sorry.
It's the next
Okay,
one.
I'm sorry. Okay.
No, they're fine, it's a lot going on.
Mhm.
So we, roll call.
Ms. Nolan,
Aye.
Mr. Oaks,
Aye.
Mrs. Creighton,
Aye.
Mr. Hodges,
Aye.
Mr. Carson,
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe,
Aye.
and Mrs. Perkins.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay.
Motion carried. I'd like to call Dr. Todd Koval to the podium to share information regarding the maintenance MOU. Dr. Koval.
So you'll see that at your success, there was a change. The updated one, number 12, is the only thing that changed on it. During the maintenance negotiations, there was one employee who essentially ran out of steps. So in fixing the health insurance piece, they also asked if we could fix that as well so that he could move his step. Step for maintenance is 7 cents, so it's very modest cost to the district.
Any questions for Dr. Koval? And do we have a recommendation for the health insurance / wage memorandum of understanding for SEIU B Local 73 maintenance employees?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the health insurance / wage memorandum of understanding as updated with SEIU B Local 73 maintenance employees, I should say as updated.
Okay, can I have a motion?
Motion?
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Oaks,
Aye.
Mr. Hodges,
Aye.
Mrs. Perkins,
Aye.
Mr. Carson,
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe,
Aye.
Ms. Nolan,
Aye.
and Mrs. Creighton.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay.
Motion carried. Do we have a recommendation for the health insurance / wage memorandum of understanding for SEIU C Local 73 security employees?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the health insurance / wage memorandum of understanding for SEIU C Local 73 security employees as presented.
Have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mrs. Briscoe,
Aye.
Mr. Oaks,
Aye.
Mr. Carson,
Yes.
Mrs. Creighton,
Aye.
Ms. Nolan,
Aye.
Mr. Hodges,
Aye.
and Mrs. Perkins.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay.
Motion carried. Do we have a recommendation for the health insurance / wage memorandum of understanding for the Teamster employees local 916?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the health insurance / wage memorandum of understanding for the Teamster employees local 916 as presented.
Have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote?
Mrs. Perkins?
Aye.
Mrs. Creighton? Mrs. Briscoe?
Aye.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Oaks?
Aye.
Ms. Nolan?
Aye.
And Mr. Carson.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nay.
Motion carried. Do we have any updates from board members regarding? Yes.
Mhm.
I'd like to just publicly thank Todd, Dan, and the team to got all this impact bargaining done. So everybody,
Quickly.
so everybody knows where they stand with health insurance, and so thanks you, Todd, Dan, and the team, and all the employees, who negotiated on their behalf. So it was a lot of work done in a short period of time.
Okay, now do we have any updates from board members? All right. From board members regarding board committees?
I have a quick, discussion point, it's not really about board committees. As we look to next board meeting, when we will have a recommendation for hiring a contract manager and an architect for implementing our bold facilities plan, I would like for us as a board to land on some broad goals for this next phase, so that it could help provide direction and understanding for Dr. Frigo and his team about what our expectations are. I think these need to be driven from the strategic plan as a way to help align the facility piece of this with where we started our work, with our strategic plan. So I had cast a very rough draft, as you can see. I didn't even finish the last sentence.
That was good.
It's like I'm out of juice here in terms. So what I'd like is for all of you to opine on this and whether or not it's necessary, and then also, am I missing anything here? Do we need to wordsmith this? I don't want to have so many goals that it becomes cumbersome, but I do think that we need to provide some level of expectation and to set the bar so that we know what we're shooting for and provide some direction to staff. So if everyone could chew on this for a couple of days, and if we could figure out a way to maybe bring this back for a formal adoption in one of the next coming meetings.
Okay. Anyone else? Any board discussion items aside from Beth's semi-completed?
Definitely semi.
I have a question. Do we have, wouldn't be a job description, do we have a goal that we've got when you were interviewing that we've got set, that were our expectations?
Or
For the contractors, yes, I'm sorry.
as far as,
What our expectations are.
I think they're still working on that agreement.
I'd like to see that before I set up goals, because I'd like to make sure we're in alignment. And as a board, I need to understand what the administration's expecting.
Dr. Bouchard, do you have any comments? I know you're.
I believe in the RFP, there.
There should have been something. That would be helpful to have, so that we can make sure we're in alignment. Yes, yes.
Thank you. I believe in the RFP, there were some parameters that describe what our objectives and what our goals were, so that everybody who put in and put in their qualifications for these services had a pretty good idea of what was the expectation and what were the objectives of this project.
So I'd like to see that. That way I can make sure I'm in alignment. And also I know our strategy, so I'd like to have that information so that I can be prepared for the next board meeting.
Okay, you just send out the RFP and we can review. Okay. Correct.
Do we also have that same information for the architects? Sorry.
Oops.
So, where are we in the architect agreement? We've already executed that, right? Or no?
The board has not executed.
Yeah, okay. So, there are two phases here that you need to be alert to, and I guess in wanting to know exactly what you want in advance, there's the RFP phase where broad goals and objectives are set out. But when you execute these agreements, the AIA documents, and just to explain this, and I don't know that you've even touched base with Fred, I have with Todd on this. The AIA documents, when they're finally executed, set forth exactly what it is you expect of either a CM or an architect. What I've seen so far is almost completed architectural AIA documents and completely form-based, no details, on the CM documents. I saw those the end of last week. So do you want the specificity of a completed AIA document, or do you want just the RFP?
Do you have the AIA document?
We
pretty close
have,
to them? I'd like to see both. That would help me formulate.
okay,
I wanna make sure we're all on the same page. I don't want us to be like this.
so the AIA documents are very close, so they'll have to decide when they wanna submit those to you based on how close they think they are with Sam. The CM documents are way off at this point. They're not remotely close, and they're gonna need a lot of work, and I wouldn't expect. I think you gotta decide which one of those two forms you're gonna use to start with, because they're dramatically different.
So
So
Brian,
I don't know timing on that.
as I understood this timing was that it was coming forward for our approval next Tuesday. Are we approving the hiring without seeing those agreements, or do you think, do we need to see those agreements before we do the hire? Cause it sounds like we're a ways from having this ready for Tuesday.
I think you could scramble. I don't commit you guys to things that I want you to.
I don't want, Brian, I don't wanna scramble.
Yeah, I mean, this is a
This
big
is
decision,
big,
yeah.
You, but I'm gonna say it the way I think is reasonable. You could scramble and probably get the architect agreement ready by Tuesday if you had to. I don't think it's a great idea, but if you had to, you could. The CM agreement, you wouldn't have, I wouldn't have, if what I think matters, it might or it might not. I wouldn't approve anything as quickly as Tuesday, as far off as we are at the moment. We're pretty far off. I mean, we don't even have, based on the two documents I saw and responded to yesterday, we don't even have a system yet. Well, do you think we have a system?
I think this is one of the reasons I'm putting on the finance meeting for Friday, so we can have further discussion about it, because we do need some guidance. The CM contracts, they sent two. They sent one that was advisory and one that's at risk. We have to make a decision on which one that we're working on in order to complete the contract. I think to answer your question, Beth, I think that in approving the contract for the CM, you are effectively hiring the CM. So I would say you don't wanna hire the CM waiting for the contract. I think you wanna hire the contract. You get it. What did I miss?
No, I think that's.
So if we're giving you guidance on that on Friday, Todd, at the finance committee meeting, that document is not gonna be ready for Tuesday.
Online, no.
Okay, alright, okay, alright.
Detail.
That's helpful, thank you.
I think what we've done is established who we would like to have, and now we're doing the hard
So it's
part.
good they have this now, because there's really nothing concrete.
Okay, and like I said, this is the Beth Nolan staff, I think the board needs to.
Yeah, we'll get
Yeah,
feedback.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are two steps here, and I wanna make sure everybody, again, the architectural agreement, in my judgment, is very close. And at any point that administration felt comfortable, I'd feel comfortable. The CM piece is a two-step process to get to my comfort level, again, which may or may not matter. One, it's to decide whether you're gonna do a standard CM agreement, non-constructor CM agreement, or whether you're gonna do an at-risk non-constructor agreement. You gotta decide that first. And then second, you've gotta fill in all the terms in the CM agreement when you've decided which one of the two formats you're gonna use. And both those things are gonna take a while. Just because I think you're gonna be held up by the CM once you get there. I don't think it's gonna be anybody in administration, but
It would seem that one of the things we need to know are the pros and cons of doing it just a regular CM agreement and a CM at risk, because there are some definite issues between them.
And you'd also probably, to measure that, you'll likely need to know the comparative costs. Because one would expect that a CM at risk is gonna be much more expensive than a regular CM contract, because he's taking risk.
So at this point, we'll get a copy of the request for proposal on Fridays. We can review, and the rest of this, we're gonna have to,
Well,
So
there'll be an
who's coming to
update.
the finance meeting on Friday?
Yeah, there'll be a finance
what
committee.
time?
2:30?
We post all of our finance meetings because it's a requirement of the law, it's Open Meetings Act. So you're all welcome to come, there's no limitation in terms of who can be there and who can't. I would suggest that we invite our attorney to come too.
For this one, yeah.
Or somebody else that could
I will
represent.
be out of
Yeah.
town, so I won't be
Yeah.
available.
Okay.
2:30.
Yeah.
It's not the greatest time, but, and before we leave him, because one of the things he did point out was making a decision on whether you want to, in your architectural agreement and your CM contract, you want arbitration or do you want, to be able to litigate? I think that's a question that he'd better to explain, and it'd be good to get some feedback on.
So,
How does that work?
because we're not all gonna be at the finance committee meeting, I appreciate the fact that you need guidance, but I'm wondering, do we do this on Tuesday on the 4th? Especially since we know the agreement really isn't gonna be ready for us to vote on the 4th anyway. I mean, I'd rather have Sherry's input on this before,
I'd
you
like to
know,
have
I
some
mean,
input.
right?
I had already planned my trip, so I
Right,
didn't
right,
know
right,
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't wanna delay this, but,
So on Friday is have general discussion, so if there are things that Todd needs to get for the meeting, then on Tuesday where you'll be, so we can actually have the final board.
5.
right.
educated.
So Kendall, you won't be here, and Ryan, are you
No,
gonna be out
no,
next Tuesday?
yeah.
So it's gonna be difficult to get us all around the table. But I think maybe having a two-pronged approach to this and then land on a,
I think the board needs to know all the pros and cons of each approach before we decide where we're going. And I think the finance committee would be a good place to start, particularly if we have some written documentation where the rest of the board members can have that.
yeah, it can be emailed out.
Mhm.
Ken, can you be there on Friday afternoon?
I'm not sure.
Okay, alright.
So what Todd wanted me to talk about, and I'm not, I don't know whether I can be there Friday at 2:30 or I can't be. I'll try to find a replacement, but the replacement won't be plugged into any of the things that Todd wants me to talk about, because the replacement can't be David, and that limits me as to who I can, I mean, unless miraculously he has a baby before Friday. So what Todd wanted me to address is that in both the architect's agreement and both forms of the CM agreement, there are some choices as to dispute resolution. The choices are basically arbitration or litigation. Generally, the architects and CMs prefer litigation. Generally, the owner prefers arbitration. There's some pretty good reasons for that. The form architect's agreement that was submitted to me had the litigation box checked, meaning Sam preferred litigation to arbitration. The CM agreements I saw had no preference expressed. So here's why the owner prefers arbitration. As a general rule, you expect that an arbitrator's you'll forgive the expression, split the baby. Arbitrators tend not to enter into all or nothing decisions, particularly when you're talking about money involved, which you always are in a construction dispute. If you're an architect, or if you're a CM, the thought that you're going to lose part of the case is scary. I mean, you're essentially the defendant. You, the architect, the CM is the defendant. You're essentially the plaintiff. And the expectation in arbitration. Second problem for them is that access to arbitration is much easier than access to a courtroom, right? They don't like that. They want to make the process as difficult as they can possibly make it. And arbitration is also quicker than litigation. You get an arbitration result probably in 6 months or thereabouts. You're not going to get a court result because there are processes in advance of litigation, discovery in particular, that slow down the process. So, but if you decide you prefer arbitration, and I'm not trying to sell either one, I mean, I'm just telling you what the norm, you decide what you want to do, but understand that you're going to get some resistance from the other side because they have an expressed preference in the sense that they've already checked off the litigation box. Does that make sense?
So we can have conversation.
Is it possible for us to video the finance committee meeting and perhaps upload that so that everyone, if they're not here, could see that conversation and be prepped for the meeting on Tuesday?
Just want to have it there.
Okay. Whatever's easiest, sir. Yeah, okay.
Wherever you're comfortable.
Is that possible?
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw the guys in the back, they were shaking their heads no, so we can make sure it gets videoed.
Any other discussion items at this time? We'll now move on to important dates. The public portion of the next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be at 6:30 p.m. Tuesday, December 4th, 2018, first floor boardroom, Kyle Administration Building. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. We're now adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.